Ray, imagine you get your hands around something unlike anything the world has ever seen before. Something no one would believe unless they saw it for themselves.
I pretty much imagine that every week, Jeff.
Okay.
I mean, we've chased some pretty crazy legends. Sometimes it's hard to believe some of these things could actually be true.
I get that. Well, this week's adventure may just stretch your skepticism to its outer limits.
Okay, I'm ready. Well, this is a pretty spot on Long Island Sound here in the Lordship section of Stratford. What are we looking for?
Well, we're on the Connecticut coast, heading to Stratford Point Lighthouse.
But what is it about lighthouses, Jeff? I mean, we've explored so many over the years.
Yeah, we have.
They all seem to be haunted. Well, all right, what ghost are we looking for this time?
Okay, not a ghost this time, Ray. We're heading down to the rocks near the lighthouse in search of a mermaid. Hey, I'm Jeff Belanger, and welcome to episode 146 of the New England Legends podcast. If you give us about 10 minutes, we'll give you something strange to talk about today.
And I'm Ray Auger. Thanks for joining us on our mission to chronicle every single legend in New England one story at a time. And we can't do it without you and without the help of our Patreon patrons. These legendary people kick in just $3 per month.
Though some add a little bit more because they're awesome.
That's true, and they are. And they get early access to new episodes, plus bonus episodes and content that no one else gets to hear. Just head over to patreon.com/New England Legends to become a bigger part of the movement.
I'd also like to remind everyone that my ongoing story tour has moved into the virtual realm since this whole quarantine thing started.
Woo!
But I have a ton of programs coming up, and the good news is most of them are free, and you can attend from anywhere. You can find a list of dates, times, and places on my website or the New England Legends website.
All right, Jeff, we both have daughters.
We do.
We've both seen pretty much all of the Disney movies.
We have.
And that includes The Little Mermaid.
It does.
So now I have all these songs stuck in my head. Thank you very much.
Under the sea.
All right, don't sing another note.
Okay.
We may have to pay $1 billion to license something.
All right. Good point. Okay, so the Little Mermaid movie we all know and love was based on the 1837 story written by the Danish author Hans Christian Andersen. Now, the original is definitely a bit darker. Check out this line.
Oh, yeah. Anderson wrote, "A mermaid has no tears, and therefore she suffers so much more."
And there's also the whole only a man can save you trope that he plays into.
Well, this line from the book says, "A mermaid has not an immortal soul, nor can she obtain one unless she wins the love of a human being. On the power of another hangs her eternal destiny."
And that's not the message you want to give your daughter.
Right. I mean, that only a man can save you? That's wrong. And to get a man, you have to change everything that you are.
Yeah, but we're not here to debate the merits of the old story or Disney princesses for that matter. Hans Christian Andersen based his character on the legendary mermaid.
Now, we've explored other half-human, half-animal stories before.
We have birdmen, half-moose-men, and so on. Folklore is full of accounts of half-human, half-fish, from the sirens of Greek mythology to more traditional mermaids. In folklore, these creatures aren't always nice, and they're not always beautiful. They often call sailors to their doom.
Okay, I get that. But there was a mermaid in Stratford, Connecticut?
Yep, right here in this neighborhood if you believe the newspaper account.
Well, Lordship is aptly named. These are some swanky houses for sure.
They are. Now, to find our mermaid, we're going to explore the rocky shore and then travel back to July of 1915 to set this up. It's July 4th, 1915 here at Stratford Point Lighthouse. For the last 35 years, the lighthouse keeper has been Theodore Judson, but his friends call him Theed.
A Theed may be just a little crazy.
Oh, come on. Why do you say that?
Well, for one, his friends may call him Theed, but many Stratford locals call him Crazy Judson.
Because he lives all isolated at the lighthouse?
Oh, maybe that's part of it. But this lighthouse is different than some of the others we've explored in the past. This lighthouse is located on the mainland.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it's not like he's stuck out in the ocean. They call him Crazy because he's prone to seeing strange things.
Like what?
In 1886, he claimed to have spotted a sea serpent right off of Stratford Point. This is how he described it.
The monster was easily 200 feet in length, with whiskers that were the rich, deep green color of bog hay.
Well, okay, but he's not the first or the last person to spot a sea serpent off the coast of New England. I mean, maybe there's something to it.
Well, Theed also claims he spotted mermaids near his lighthouse. He says it's been going on for years. It's just tough to get close before they swim off.
Which is why we're here. Mermaid fever gripped this entire region decades ago because of another local guy you may have heard of.
Who's that?
He's the former mayor of nearby Bridgeport, Connecticut.
I need another clue.
He was born not far from here in Bethel, Connecticut in 1810.
I'm still not getting it.
He's considered the greatest showman who ever lived, and he once said, "There's a sucker born every minute."
Yes, of course. Phineas Taylor Barnum.
Exactly. Old P.T. Barnum once offered a $20,000 reward for the capture of a mermaid. He figured with so many folklore and mythology stories out there, plus, strange tales from sailors and those who live along the shore, he figured there must be something to it.
It was 1842 when Barnum announced he had in his possession an actual taxidermied mermaid. The Feejee Mermaid, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
That's what they called it. It wasn't as sexy or alluring in any way. It was small, it had ugly monkey-like face and arms, and its lower half was a fish.
Well, funny you mentioned the monkey-like upper body because most skeptics claim the Feejee Mermaid was nothing more than parts of a monkey, a fish, and maybe even a few other animals kind of expertly pieced together to look like a creature resembling a mermaid.
The Feejee Mermaid was eventually lost in a fire, but folks never stopped thinking about it and wondering, could there really be some species of human-like fish near our shores or in our oceans?
Okay, back to Theodore Judson of Stratford. It's July 4th, 1915, when Theodore runs to the local newspaper to tell of his mermaid encounter by the lighthouse earlier that week.
I was busying myself about the place on Monday when I heard a voice, angelic it seemed to me, and stranger than any songstress I'd ever heard, coming from the vicinity of the point. I proceeded to investigate, and from the bluff saw a mermaid, seated on one of the rocks, her hair hanging in golden tresses down her back, and she brushing it. I made up my mind to capture her, and in order to do so realized that strategy was necessary. So I made a circuit of the ground to the west, and getting to the water's edge, crept stealthily towards the wreck. Unmindful of the approach of anyone, the angelic creature sung her love ditty, and I am free to admit that no music I have ever heard so enchanted me. I dodged behind rock after rock, stopping from time to time, fearful lest she might hear my approach, until at last all chance of seclusion for me was gone. And with one bound I made for the mermaid and seized her about the waist. With a scream she struck at me with her brush, landing on my forehead and knocking my cap into the water. Then with a swish of her tail she caught me on the chin.
Judson is pointing to his chin. I see a little red mark, but really it could be a cut from a shaving razor or even a fingernail. It's barely a scratch.
Another instant, she had seized me by the hair. All this time I was struggling with her and started for the shore, but when the prize was fairly within my grasp, she gave a wiggle and slipped like an eel out of my arms, dove into the water, and with a tantalizing laugh dove out of sight. This is a true mermaid story, and if you're inclined to doubt it, or anyone else, I have the very hairbrush that I picked up with my cap from the water to prove the truth of what I tell you.
Yeah, that is indeed a hairbrush. But it looks like an ordinary hairbrush, except there's an oyster shell on the back of it. Judson claims mermaids get their hairbrushes from the staterooms of sunken ships, which is why it looks so ordinary.
Of course. So this story makes the rounds in the newspapers, and pretty soon locals remember the tale Judson told of seeing the sea serpent decades earlier. And those who know him around Stratford again bring up his nickname of Crazy Judson, until people shrug and believe what they want to believe anyway.
And that brings us back to today. I love this story, Ray. It's got sea monsters and mermaids.
And what seems like a pretty unreliable witness, Jeff.
Yeah, I get that too. But still, mermaid stories have been around for centuries, and they're not going away. It's funny how we have a way of turning the unknown into what suits us.
How do you mean?
Well, being out at sea is a lonely occupation.
But it was true then, and it's really true today.
I imagine some sailors have a wandering eye to whatever siren might call out to them by the shore.
Or the local tavern where they're in a foreign port.
Sure, and wives and girlfriends back home may be all too happy to talk about mermaids, how they're lovely creatures, but deadly if you fall under their spell and song.
And if the mermaid doesn't kill you, your wife back home will.
Exactly. Which makes Theodore Judson's a cautionary tale. Maybe it's best to avoid mermaids.
Which even further explains why we've never caught one.
So true.
You legendary listeners can catch us every single week.
I get it.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. It's free, so please subscribe so you don't miss a thing.
Please also tell a friend or two about our show. Post your favorite episode to your social media or post a review for us. It all goes a long way in helping grow our show.
We'd like to thank Jim Harold of the Paranormal Podcast for lending his voice acting talents this week. And our theme music is by John Judd.
Hey, legendary listeners. This is Andrew Warren out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Wanted to say that we are a legendary community. I love you all. Be safe out there. Remember, the bizarre is closer than you think.